Shalom, welcome to another ProPresenter training. Again, this is Dominic. Today I'm going to teach you about how to add different actions or macros within ProPresenter. A lot of times this will already be done, but sometimes things do get missed, overlooked, or just forgotten about, and we're here to be the final eyes just to make sure everything looks good and will operate smoothly for service. First off is actions. So, actions, what they do and when we want to use them. When you right-click a slide, you'll be greeted with this little screen here, and this is where we can add actions. Today, we'll just be focusing on slide actions. This first action that we see here is clear. This allows us to clear a specific element of a slide or everything. For instance, the countdown timer is a prop, so if we just go back up to the countdown timer here, this here is technically a prop. So if you see these two highlighted things here, we have clear slide or clear prop. So if we clear the slide, the prop will still be going. So say that the countdown timer is done and then we need to quickly jump to a slide, right? This is what people are seeing. This is really not what we want people to see, right? So we want to clear this based on something. We can either do this by hitting this, clear props, which is what this is right here, or we can add an action if we know where we're going to be. So there I just added a command to say when I click this slide, we want to clear the props. So just like that. Another thing that this is really good for is transitioning between elements of a service, so between a song into the message. There's stuff in the foreground. See if we come back to that. That is still sitting in the foreground. We really don't want that. So if we were to put a clear all command, it would clear everything in the background. So that way if we were to come back up here, it would just be a blank screen and we don't have that background. Now this is a very dramatic circumstance, and typically all of our macros over here have clear commands. This is just if something gets added in the service. The next thing we will be looking at is the audience look. And the audience look tells ProPresenter how we want the slide to look, or the content on the screen or slide to look based on what is happening. For example, during a song, we want the lyrics to show on live stream. So we add action. We go to audience look, and we click songs, which is already happening up here. So if I were to get rid of this action here, and I hit clear all, and we were to look at key fill. All right, so say this is, we're in the middle of pastor's sermon, and then we're going up to the last song, and we get our background going, and then we start putting lyrics up, but we don't have the command to say, hey, I want this to look like this. It'll just look like the last command, right? So the audience look is a way for us to say, hey, we want this to look a certain way at this destination. So if we open up the actions here, we can see that we have an audience look of songs here under the songs macro. So if we were to drag and drop this, it would change the look. That way it looks proper on live stream. The next thing we'll go over is action stage. So this allows us to look at our stage displays. Remember, we have two stage displays, one on the wall and one up by the booth. So this allows us to say, hey, we want this certain configuration to look here, and we want another to look here. So let's take a look into that a little bit deeper. So if we go back up here to screens, and if we go to edit layouts, we can see all the layouts that we can have for stage displays. So currently, this is what we want GCC songs to look like. We have the current slide text, so this is what's currently displayed in the song. And then this shows their next plus a clock. That way they know what time it is. This is Pastor's next slide screen. So he has a clock, he has a timer, and what's currently on the next slide. And then this is for Pastor's notes. So we can have these displays interchangeably or these configurations at different displays. And that's what the stage button allows us to do. So if we were to look at the booth screen, this is what Pastor would see. Pastor would be like, well, what the heck? Where are my notes? Well, much like all the other macros, we have all of these already pre-set up. So the wall stage screen gets the new pastor next slide screen, and the booth screen gets the new pastor's notes screen. So that way, when we're looking here, pastor gets his notes on this screen, and then he can see the next slide on that other screen. But because it's not applied, we don't have that yet. So as an example, we'll just set this up right now. Add action, stage. The wall stage screen will get new pastor, next slide screen, and the booth screen will get new pastor notes screen. So now the wall stage screen shows the next slide, which is John 15:9, and the booth screen gets his current notes on that slide. So if we open up the edit slide, we can see all of his notes down here at the bottom. Our next action to review is slide destination. If selected, this action will allow us to put a specific slide or its contents to a specific destination. For example, if we had extra notes for a slide, we can keep our original content on the audience screen while still scrolling through the notes on the stage screen. So, say that the old way that Pastor Aaron used to do his sermons was, so this was how Pastor Aaron used to do his notes before we started putting the notes on the slide. So with the slide destination, we can say that we want this to only display on this screen. And this will just stay on the LED wall. Same thing here. So this is what he's seen from the back screen, this is what he is seeing, these notes here is what he's seeing on the back screen. And then this is what is being shown to the audience. So despite this slide still being selected, this content is still being displayed on the stage screen while this is still being shown on the audience screen. So this allows us to control what content goes where. The next action we will be going over is timers. And timers allow us to trigger a timer based on a slide click. For example, we want to let Pastor know that he only has 35 minutes to preach, so we trigger a timer for him to see. Okay, so I will put a command here, say add action, timer, and Aaron's sermon, which goes for 35 minutes. And if we want to make him feel bad, just kidding, we can allow it to overrun. That way he can see how far over he's gotten. And if we click it, it will re-trigger that 35-minute timer. Action props. Props act as an overlay. So if we remember, the countdown is technically a prop. So if we were to clear the slide and just look at what the audience is seeing, we still see that this is still up there, and that is because the countdown functions as a prop. It's just an overlay of a slide for certain elements. So as an example of how we use this for the looping announcements countdown. That way we can still scroll through here and still have the countdown going. Action message. So this is one that we haven't had to use in quite a while, but in the instance that we do have a troubled child, typically a student ministry volunteer would come up here and they'd say, hey, we need this number displayed up on screen so the parent can come and get their child, right? So if we come over here and see messages, the messages kind of work like a prop, but it is for specific messages in the instance that we use it. It's just for troubled children. The theme that is applied just goes to the lower portion of the screen. And So say the number is UZE34, right? And then we can click show, and that'll pop up at the bottom of the screen. And if we no longer want it there, we can just click hide. Or if nobody's gotten up to get their kid and student or kids ministry is like, hey, we need them, you can just give a very subtle hint like, hey, we need this person. The rest of the actions that we have doesn't really pertain to anything that we use anymore. If it were a special event where we wanted to run a media playlist or an audio playlist, this is where we would trigger it from. Communication, we used to use MIDI for light cues, but we don't really use that anymore. Audio input, the same thing. If we wanted an external audio source from the ProPresenter computer to go into ProPresenter, that's how we would use it. Video inputs, this would be pretty creative to use an NDI camera. Again, we don't necessarily use it right now. Macros, this is another way to trigger macros. But on that topic, this is where macros are the lifesavers, because unless somebody intentionally goes in and changes these will remain unchanged. And the macros are the lifesaver of all the actions, because all of the actions are already in here. So for worship, we want the songs macro. We want the clear all in there. We want the audience to see it through songs on live stream. We want the stage screens to look a certain way, and we want to make sure that lyrics are going to both stage and audience. And all of these are done with just a click of a button, right? And most of the time, the actions are already there to trigger this macro. So, bam. For Pastor's sermon, Aaron's sermon macro, clicked, bam, all the actions are already done. So the macros really are the lifesaver of this. I'm going to go through an example scenario that we just went through. Pretty cool training opportunity here. So Pastor Aaron did a element in his sermon this last week where he did 2 minutes of silence. And we needed a way to let Livestream know that, hey, you didn't lose us. We're just sitting still and silent for 2 minutes. So we wanted to add a timer to the screen. So Livestream was just going to put up this video feed, and there was going to be a timer going. That way they knew that they didn't lose us. So what you can do is you can create a timer here. So as you can see, there's a 2-minute timer already in here. And what I did is I used this edit slide. And for this slide specifically, what we did is we clicked this. So this doesn't show up in there unless there's something inside this text box. This is just the background of how the slide works. So you remember here, nothing is there because there is nothing there. So what I did is I clicked edit slide. I clicked this text box. I used this linked text. This allows us to configure this text to apply to a certain action around ProPresenter. And I clicked timer. And then I clicked the 2-minute timer. And I just made sure that the format was just in minutes and seconds. And I made sure it just triggered that 2-minute timer. So we come here, we click it again, we see this 2 minutes pop up. And you can either do this here by clicking play on the timers, and it'll start going down. Or if you really wanted to, you could have just used this macro here, which triggers this timer alone. You click it, and it'll automatically get it rolling. Or just keep it simple, and you could have just added the action, timer, 2 minutes. So that's just an example of how we would use a timer or add a timer in the event of the last-minute nature of adding things, such as this last Sunday. So that is going to conclude this longer segment of this ProPresenter training. We went over all the actions. that we use. We went over the clear action. Remember that allows us to clear a specific element of the slide or everything. We looked at audience looks. This is what ProPresenter says, hey, we want this slide to look a certain way at a certain destination. We did the stage action, which allows us to control what stage screen or confidence monitor preset is used. We looked at slide destinations, putting specific content in specific places. We looked at timers, how to add them or how to trigger them. We looked at the props, specifically the countdown. We looked at the message, and the lifesaver of all of them, the macros. That is going to conclude this. Thank you very much.